Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we want to look at two distros that build themselves for a good user experience, switching over from Windows, wanting a good secure operating system, both based on Ubuntu, but running different desktop environments and different interpretations of the traditional. So these aren't just Linux distributions with these different desktops. They actually have added something else to it for the theming and other purposes. Of course, we're looking at FerenOS and ZorinOS. Now, if you have watched several of the other DistroWars videos, we're going to do a little bit different here in that I want to go into the website a little bit more and probably spend a little bit less time in each distro, just because there's some things I want to look at the websites as well. The other thing to consider as we did this, it shouldn't impact you guys watching it later, but you guys watching it live, I installed it and I didn't even boot either one of these. So hopefully everything works. We'll go ahead and have a look at it though. So let's go ahead and dive on over first and have a look at their websites. So on FerenOS, FerenOS, of course, just went through a change. There is still the Classic Edition now, which is based on Cinnamon, and the new one is based on Plasma. So what used to be FerenOS was based on Cinnamon and Linux Mint, I believe, and FerenOS Next was based on Ubuntu with the Plasma desktop. Now they've switched it around a little bit, so that now Feren Classic is, I think it's still based on Linux Mint with the Cinnamon desktop, and FerenOS is now based on Ubuntu with Plasma. So with that out of the way, it's designed to be very easy to use, very familiar, of course based on Ubuntu, designed for security and privacy. And ZorinOS, ZorinOS is, it basically says your computer, it's easier, it's more powerful. I think is the next one. More secure. There's something about viruses too. More reliable. I don't know. These things keep on scrolling back and forth. Better. ZorinOS is an alternative to Windows and macOS designed to make your computer faster and more powerful, secure, and privacy respecting. Now, some people might have some questions about this last privacy respecting because Zorin did, for a period of time, sneak in a data collection thing, which wasn't a huge data collection thing, but it was enough to say, put on the brakes. And myself and several other people raised awareness to this, and now on the installation, you have the ability to opt out of the data collection. It is now on the installer though, so we'll take that for what it is. Now, when you are going to get ZorinOS, then when you head on over to it, you have the choices of the Ultimate, the Core, the Lite, and the Education. And of course, the Zorin Ultimate costs $40, and it really doesn't have a ton more on it than it does have some extra nice theming, and it has a bunch of applications that you can get without paying for them anyway. But to have everything all nicely packaged, it's not all simple stuff that you can install from the repos, but anyway, it does give you that. We also, though, have the Core Essentials, which honestly is probably better for a lot of Linux users, definitely, in which case we just have the basic system. We have just a couple of themes, and we have some basic applications. And then, of course, if you're running an older computer, they have a light version based on XFCE. There's an education one as well. We're using the Core because that's more of the primary one. When you go to download it, they ask you for an email address. You can always skip to download, but I just do not like this type of approach. To me, this feels like this corporate approach where they're trying to collect data. They've obviously tried to sneak in some data. They're trying to collect some money on what otherwise is free software, which I agree with the idea of supporting developers. And if you're using a distribution in your production environment, you should be supporting those developers. But I think that the way Zorin does it, it's kind of like the way Elementary does it. It's a little sneaky and conniving, in my opinion. So we're not going to download that right now. So that's kind of just having a look at what the two individual distributions might look like out of the box. Just looking at their website specifically. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and boot up the distros inside a virtual machine. So, and this is going to be first boot, so they might not boot up full screen. They might, I don't know. Hopefully everything installed correctly, because I just went in, and because both of these do have some initial startup things that I wanted to show without going in and clearing everything back out. So if there's any major issues, then we'll go ahead and reinstall stuff. So here is FerenOS first boot. Okay, so here we are, and it did not boot in full screen. That's okay. I'm not going to give any of these a penalty for not booting full screen at this point in time on first boot. So let's just go ahead and make it full screen. All right. All right, so now we are on FerenOS. When you first boot up Feren, you do have this very nice welcome screen here. So here we can install VirtualBox guest editions because it detects this. You will not see this if you're installing it on real hardware. I am not going to do that. So over here, if you need third-party codecs. So this is several types of codecs for MP3s, DVDs, Windows media formats, a lot of those types of things. Now, Linux distributions generally do not install those on it out of the box, simply because there may be some copyright versions in some areas. You have to understand that. Now, typically, if you're just using, doing a computer for home use, you don't generally have any issues. But we do have a very nice install codecs right out of the box. And I have learned my lesson from previous videos. Do not click next until this is done installing. It'd be nice if this were blocked out, because if you actually hit next too early, then you skip the next screen, which is an important screen that I would like to show you. So there we are. Our codecs are now installed. Now we can click next. Now here we have a variety of layouts that we can choose from. So here is an Ubuntu Unity layout, a Cupertino layout, which is very much like Mac. So I believe I can click on this and show you what these look like. So over here, very much like a Mac look, we have a dock down here. It doesn't have quite the same animation effects, but otherwise all of the layouts are much the same. Here's your about the computer. Here's whatever the current application is. So very closely matched to the Mac. We do have the Redmond layout, which I believe is specifically a Windows, is it a Windows, more like a Windows XP, Windows 98 type look to it. So this is the Redmond type layout. We have a familiar layout, which I believe is more like the Windows 10 layout, if I remember. And so complete with a Windows 10 tile menu. So this is pretty much an exactly like a Windows 10 menu there, if you really like the way that looks. There's a tablet mode and the FerenOS default, which gives us this menu here. I've never been a huge fan of this individual menu here. But anyway, that is a matter of personal preference. Let's go ahead with the familiar layout for the case of this particular video. So we go next. We have the options to go with our light mode or with our dark mode. So let's go ahead and pull up a window here so we can kind of see what both of these guys look like. Okay, so there's lights, there's darks, and there's default. And I'm not sure what the default goes to. It might just be the coloration schemes. Okay, you can log in, log out again for certain effects. See what we get. So I think some of these colors will not necessarily appear until we log in, log out. So we should see the green on this if we log in and log out. So you can pick your accent colors, whatever you want to do. We'll just go with that. So over here, if you want to connect your Android device, you can grab the app for your phone, either on Google Play or on F-Droid, and then you can configure KDE Connect there. And then here is reduce eye strain at night. So if you want to configure night color, you can do that. And now we are set to go. So very, very nice login screen when you first get started with it. Now we have a user guide on the welcome screen. We have post installation, so getting updates. Here's some optional tasks here. Set up your backups, set up your firewall, set up your users. So overall, just your first out of the box user experience is absolutely phenomenal. So here's a driver manager. If you need to install more drivers, Broadcom drivers, some graphics cards might have that. And then we have some different software you can install. If you want to do snaps, you have that option. If you want to install with the regular store, you have this option here. Let's go ahead and get the store booted up, see which version we have. So it looks like we are using the Mint software store, which is very good, and that it isolates your flat packs out separately. So overall, we have a very good experience out of the box with this. Now, once you have the first setup, you can still change your accent colors, but we don't have quite as user-friendly of a color selector here. We have this one, and there is another one which is better as well, and I can never, ever, ever find it after I'm here. It's in here somewhere, and you can change the accent colors as well. It's not quite as user-friendly, like I said, but it is definitely there. We do have excellent tools on here, like the web browser manager or manager, which is going to enable you to install whatever your favorite web browsers are. So out of the box, we have Vivaldi installed. We can install Firefox, Chrome, GNOME Web, Vivaldi, Chromium. I'm not sure why these are cutting off, if that's an error, a bug in the system, or because of my virtual machine. Brave, Opera. So you have a variety of different items. I think I think it says global theme. I think is the one that gives us the accent colors. Okay, so here, these are where you can change your theme layouts. That's not where you can change your colors at, but it is in here somewhere. I'm not going to spend the time looking for it necessarily. The applications that we have out of the box, we'll just kind of scan through. Now, some of these guys are in your system settings. Some of them are just utilities, like your disks. We have Geary for email. We have Krita installed. We have the full LibreOffice suite. We have maps. There you go, theme colorizer. That's the one I was looking for. So this one here, as you can see it's not quite as user-friendly, but you can still do it. So, pick your color. You want the color which is light, or the dark version, which is the one next to dark. Just change it. That's all good to go. All right. So we are good. Well, let's hit cancel and we'll be set. So that is FerenOS out of the box. Overall, very good. A lot of layout options, very familiar. It feels very comfortable. It's snappy. It doesn't give me any issues right out of the box. It does have this appropriate amount of tools and an appropriate amount of help right out of the box. Very, very good. And the developer behind it, FerenOS Dev, is also a very great guy who is very open to helping with the systems and things like that. So that's actually what we get over there. So we'll come back to ZorinOS next. All right, so here we are over on Zorin, and just launched up with a nice black screen and Zorin shot across the top. So I just decided to jump on over here while it finishes its boot up sequence. So again, like Feren, we installed it, and I did not do a first run, so it may or may not boot into full screen. It looks like it does boot into full screen. All right, so let's go ahead and click over here. So this is, of course, based on GNOME. So we have GNOME, which defaults to X, or we have GNOME on Wayland. If you don't know what that means, stick on the default. Wayland sometimes has some issues with a few little things. So let's go ahead and get into this guy on the very first boot after the installation and see what it looks like. So out of the box, this is what we get. We'll give it just a second here in case it's trying to load up a start screen. I think it should give us some configuration options, just like Feren did. Give it just a second though. Apparently, it's not going to give us setup configuration options. Okay, so anyway, I thought it did out of the box, but I guess it did not or something. But anyway, let's go ahead and Let's see if there's a welcome screen in there. All right, let's go into our system settings. Okay, Zorin appearance. So Zorin appearance is if you do want to change the layout. So of course, this is what the layout looks like, which is more of a like a Windowsy type layout. We do have this layout as well, which is also very similar. Very subtle differences on this one. This is your more modern without telling us what windows are open, more like a Windows 10 Classic. This is more of like a Windows Vista, Windows 7 Classic, where we have that. We have a software updater set to go. Here we also have a Cupertino type view where it's gives a little bit more like a Mac. This guy looks like here. And so you can choose whichever one of these you would like to run with. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the default. Of course, it seems to have, something seems to have frozen on me right now. Uh-oh, Zorin's frozen on me right now. There we are. Now we're back. All right. So now we can actually show icons on our desktop by default, or we can turn this feature off and disable icons on our desktop. So that's very nice. We can say where are the title buttons? Are they on the left or on the right? So we have a minimize and a close. Let's open up the folder, see if we have a maximize button as well, which we do. Minimize, maximize, close buttons are there. We also have inside of our theming, we do have a very nice accent color here. So this one here does work automatically, unlike Feren. So you can change your various style colors on the fly. So very much like a Windows 10 like feel, where you can kind of go with whatever feel you're looking for. Now we have more of a lighter background, more of your darker theme, and you do have this middle ground here. So the middle ground here, if you do this one here, this was one of the things that I had raised in a previous video where they had actually commented back, and they actually turned this to do manual by default. So if you're going to use the sunset to sunrise, you need to give it some location settings permissions to turn on location settings, and then it's going to check the just the regional based on your IP address. Whereas when's your sunrise, when's your sunset. And in the sunrise period, then it's going to give you a light theme. In the sunset period, it's going to give you a dark theme. I don't want to turn on that. So over here, we can actually default over here and tell it when do you want to run light theme, starting at what time, when do you want to start dark theme, starting at what time. So you can kind of see what we have here. So anything that's greater than what we currently have, it's going to jump into our dark theme there. So this is kind of where we are. I'm just going to go ahead. Let's just go ahead and keep it on the light for now for the purpose of this video. So you can choose your variety of different application themes, which if you leave it set blank like this, and it actually I find looks a little bit better. And I have not found a way to reset these. I think there might be, but I'm not going to mess with any of those. Basic font sizes, and then this is your panel. Do you want your panel on your top or on your bottom? What is the height you want on your panel? Do you want it to have dynamic background opacity or not? So this is a little bit more translucent. Do you want to show activities button or not? Show the desktop button or not, which of course does show it in the Windows location, which I love that. One of the only distros I know that does that out of the box to give a very good look and feel. Clock and calendar, you can set the date in there or not. You can show the seconds or not. You can show the week numbers. We don't have a very quick and easy right inside here to change the clock settings, but I believe we can set that. I was kind of looking to see if I can set the time because I don't like 24-hour time. Not seeing that setting right out of the box. It's got to be around here somewhere. We're not going to spend a lot of time hunting around for it. Okay, so here it does tell us that we have some updates to do. I'm not going to install updates today. Let's go ahead and have a look at our software store. I think this one uses the GNOME Software Center, which I do not like the GNOME Software Center overall. I find that the Linux Mint one that comes with FerenOS is definitely a better software center. A lot of the problems I have found is I've actually found things missing from the Software Center on GNOME. So oftentimes, like Ubuntu, Thunderbird seems to be missing from this. You can install it. It's in the repos. Fortunately, it's here on this one. So that's actually a good thing. Overall, I find that the GNOME Software Center be very slow and very clunky. I'm not a big fan of it. But anyway, it does have a nice GUI Software Center. We do have here a variety of games. We have just a few simple applications for accessories. We have GIMP installed. Does look like we have the full LibreOffice suite. So overall, our software is very similar. Feren gives us a little bit better choice in that we have a website browser or a web browser installation tool, so we can actually choose which web browser we're using rather than being locked into Firefox, which is my preference. But hey, we actually might want something different anyway, though. So I do like the application that we have. Zorin Connect, I believe, is for your mobile device. So that's again, Feren also has a very similar tool to that. So that's pretty much what we have. So we do have the separate Zorin appearances. This is the one thing, if you do like changing the accent colors and things on your system more frequently, Zorin might be the better choice. Overall, I'm not sure you're going to go wrong with either one of these distributions. Reminder again, Zorin does have default data collection and are a little bit more pushy about, collecting information from you on the website from the download. So from that perspective alone, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of what Zorin does, but overall, I have to completely agree. It is a good distribution for new users coming over from Windows. And I'd definitely rather you on Zorin than Windows for your average user doing your average user type things. Both distributions, though, are excellent. I will lean towards Feren, but definitely have a look at both of them, play around with both of them. They're going to be fairly similar in some areas. I think you're probably going to get a little better experience. I don't know where you're going to get a better experience, honestly. Both Plasma and GNOME. GNOME takes more system resources. Both of them can run a little clunky at times. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So with that, that's kind of my comparison between these two distributions. Let me know what your thoughts are about Zorin and about Feren. Let us know in the comments down below what your favorite one of these two happens to be.